Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's tutorial, we will design this responsive website together using Tailwind CSS, a framework which has been steadily growing in its popularity. Even the company I work for utilizes it for its website, so I get to use it nearly every day. When working with Tailwind CSS, you can apply different classes to your elements directly in your HTML in order to style them. Each class usually applies one CSS style rule. For example, if you add a border -b-2 class, you will end up with an element that has a 2-pixel border at its bottom. Let's begin. I have my project folder open. It only contains 2 empty subfolders at the moment, SRC and dist. I will add Tailwind CSS to this project by installing it through the Node package manager. To do the same, you will need to have Node and npm installed on your computer if you haven't done so previously. I will link both below. You can, however, just add Tailwind CSS through a CDN. Again, I will link a CDN for you in case you need it. Please note that this option will give you less chances to customize your Tailwind configuration. So to install Tailwind with npm, I first need to initialize a package.json file by using the command npm init y. The Y flag will simply answer yes to each question. Now that we have the file ready, I can add Tailwind CSS to the project by running npm install tailwind CSS. You can see that it was added to our dependencies successfully, and we have a new folder with our Node modules. Next, I am creating a style.css file in our src folder. Here I need to add 3 lines of code: at Tailwind base, at Tailwind components, and at Tailwind utilities. When you type these lines, your editor might show you errors as it does not recognize this at Tailwind syntax. I have added 2 plugins to my code editor, VS Code, which are PostCSS language support and Tailwind CSS IntelliSense. One will get rid of the errors, and the other will make it easier to write Tailwind CSS in your HTML, as it will give you auto-suggestions of the classes which are available when you start typing. We now have to build our CSS file, which will convert these 3 directives into a bunch of utility classes. To do this, let's go back to our package.json file, where I'm going to add a script to build our project. To save time and avoid typos, I'm going to paste this in. So here I am stating that the file specified after the I flag is our input, and it should be compiled to the location specified after the O. If I now go to my terminal and run npm run build, it will compile the CSS file for us. If we look at the one generated in the dist folder, you can see that it now contains a lot of classes. With this, we can begin building the site. First, I am going to add an index.html file to the dist folder. Now, I don't want to waste your time by writing out the markup, so I have created one in advance, which I will copy-paste in. I am also making this available for you through my GitHub. You just need to visit the link below, click raw, copy-paste it, and save. With the HTML file ready, I am starting my live server, which will open the page in the browser and will always reload it when I save changes. Right now, as you can see, the site looks quite bad. Let me quickly rearrange the setup so we can see the code and the output side by side. Now let's add some classes to the body tag. I am adding bg-gray -900 and text white. When I save, you can see that the background is now a dark gray color and all the text is white. Tailwind CSS has a bunch of predefined color classes which you can all see in their documentation. The gray 900 color is this one here. I have also linked the documentation in the description if you want to check it out. There are so many classes available that I recommend having this open when you are styling your own project, so you can quickly look up properties you need. Apart from some base colors, Tailwind CSS also has some basic fonts set up for you. I personally like to select my own to make the site look more unique. So I will show you now how to import your own fonts and make them available to Tailwind. First, I will simply go to Google Fonts and select the 2 I want to use. In my case, this is Roboto and April Fatface. Here I can copy the link tags and paste it into my HTML file. Next, we need to create a Tailwind CSS configuration file, which we can do by running the command npx tailwind css init. This will generate this config file here that you can see. We can add the fonts within the theme's extend object. I just need to specify the property font families and assign it to an object with our fonts. For the keys, you can choose the name yourself. In my case, I went for April and Roboto. Then to each, we need to assign an array which contains the font name and fallback fonts. If the name has a space in it, like April Fatface, you need to wrap it into double quotes, like here. You could instead add this font family object outside of the extend property. The difference would be that if you do this, it will overwrite all the other fonts, so your project would only have access to Roboto and April Fatface. If you, however, add it inside the extend prop, it will add it on in addition to the predefined fonts given to us by the Tailwind CSS team. Which one you will go for is up to you and your project needs. I will put it under extend in this case. Since we are already configuring our Tailwind CSS setup, we might as well add the green color you see used throughout the project. This one does not come out of the box with the install, so we will need to enable it. If you go to the colors page and scroll to the bottom, you see many other colors that Tailwind has. One of them is lime, which I will add now. So below the font family object, I can paste another property. This one is called colors, and I am stating that lime should make use of the lime color we have seen on the website. Of course, we also need to import the colors object, which we can do by adding the following line of code to the top of the file. Now for the classes to get generated, we need to rerun the build command npm run build. If we then go to the compiled version and search for April, you can see that a new class has been added with the name font April, below it font Roboto, which we can now use. Let's assign font Roboto to the body tag. And if we save now, you can see that the font has changed throughout the page. To the top and bottom of the body, I want to add a padding of 1 rem. For this, I can use the class P, which stands for padding, then Y, which indicates the Y-axis, so top and bottom, and then -4, which indicates the size. 4 is basically 1 rem. If we go back to the documentation, press Ctrl F and search for padding, you can view all the classes relating to padding and what rem each converts to. Now let's do the header. I want to use Flexbox to position the site title, XY development, and the free links. For this, I can add the class Flex, then justify between, which is the equivalent to justify content between. I want to align the item center with the item center class, and then I am just adding the April font and a bit of padding on the x-axis, which is basically the left and right side of the element. Now you can see they are within one line. I want the site title to be bigger, so I can add text -XL to it. Again, you can search the docs for font size and it will list all the options and which rem they convert to. I am also adding a text color of lime in the shade of 400 to the XY. Finally, let's place the links next to each other with Flexbox. I am using the Flex class again and I am adding a gap of 2, so 0.5 rem between each. Moving on to the links, each should have a lime underline. For this, I need to add the classes border -b -2, which adds a 2 pixel border to the bottom, borderline 400 to give it its color. When users hover over links, they usually change a little bit, so to add a hover style, I can specify hover, colon, and then the style I want to add. In this case, I want to change the border color to border green 400. When building websites, usually links have a consistent style throughout. Copy-pasting these rules for each link on a big website would be quite a hassle. Thankfully, we can create our own classes and then reuse them. Let's do that now. I need to go back to the style.css file located in the src folder, so not the dist folder, and I need to add the following rule. Type in @layerComponents, curly braces. Within this, you can add the name of your class, which in my case is .link. And then within this, I need to say @apply, and here I can copy paste the rules in. Let's save it and run the build process again. Now if I go back to the HTML file, replace the classes with link, and add this to the other ones as well, you can see that all of them have the same styling. Apart from the link class, I also want to add a few classes that create the styles for the buttons, which are repeated several times in the project. Again, I will copy paste some basic rules in to save time. One of the classes is called button fill, which creates the button with the lime background. It also has some padding, a rounded border radius, and a bit of a shadow. The second button is called btn stroke. This one has a lime-colored border of 2 pixels and lime text. Both change their colors to green on hover. Finally, I added a card and card text class, which we will use for the portfolio section later on. Let's quickly run the build process again. You can also set it up to watch any changes and recompile automatically. For this, please see the link in the description. Back to our HTML. Let's style the hero area next. It should have a margin of 2.5 at the top, so I am giving it MT-10. The M stands for margin, T for top, and 10 converts to 2.5 rem. Then I want to again give the section a padding on the left and right of 1.5 rem. With the class leading, I can change the line height. I want the lines to be further apart, so I am adding the class of leading 7. The H1 should be bigger, so I am giving it a text size of 3XL. Font family should be April, and I want a 1 rem margin top and bottom, which we can achieve with MY-4. A very useful class is space -y minus and then a number. This applies space between the child elements of the tag it gets assigned to. So adding space -y-4 to this div ensures its nested paragraphs have a 1 rem distance between each other. Space -x-4 does the same, but on the x-axis if elements are stacked next to each other. The hero section has 2 links at the bottom. The first one gets our btn fill class applied, and the portfolio one gets the btn stroke. Moving on, the div holding the SVG is spilling into the buttons, so let's give it a top margin of 3 rem with MT-12. The SVG also gets some classes. I want its width to be 100%, which I can achieve with the class W-full. It should be a block element, and I want it to be centered in the middle. MX-auto will ensure that the margin on the left and right is the same. Next, we can style the services section. I want its background to be slightly lighter. With BG-gray -800, I can change it to a lighter gray. Again, I am adding some padding on the X and Y axis. The H2 should have the font April, the size should be 3XL, and it should have a 1 rem margin top and bottom. The paragraphs should have some space between them again, for which we can use the space Y4 class. At the bottom of this section, we have a list of the services being offered. To position them, I am going to use display grid. On the mobile version, the grid should have only 1 column, and the grid items should have a gap of 1 rem. The grid element should have an even lighter background and a large shadow. The border should be rounded, and I want to add a padding of 1 rem. The title, paragraph, and the Find Out More button should be 1 rem apart, again using space -y-4. I am applying the same style to the other grid items as well. Then the links should get the class btn-stroke, which we created. This time they should be 100% wide. To turn them into a block element, I can add block here. Finally, let's style the H3 with a bigger text size and font April. The portfolio section is next. Just like the other sections, this one also gets a padding assigned, so it is the same space away from the edge. The H2 also gets the same style. You could create your own classes for these like we did with the buttons and links. It is up to you. Next we have 6 portfolio items. In the final layout, they are positioned using grid. The mobile version should have a grid of 2 columns and a gap of 1 rem. Text should be centered. Now the final design shows a background image for each of the cards. These we have to add on in the config file. As it contains many URLs to images from Pexel, I will paste the code in and walk you through it. So the method we need is called background image. As an argument, we pass the theme. Then the function returns an object of key value pairs. Each of the keys, in this case photo 1 for example, has a URL property assigned to it. Now let's rebuild our CSS. Back in the HTML, we can apply them now. The first image gets the class bg-photo-1, which will assign it the first photo. If I save it, you can see that the background of company A has changed. This doesn't look too great, so add the card class we have created previously in our style.css file. This card class assigns a bg fallback color in case the image doesn't load, a box shadow with shadow-lg, rounded corners, bg-cover, which is the equivalent to background size cover, a height, and uses flex to position the text in the middle. The card text alters the font family and size of the text. Now, if we add the card class, the element becomes bigger and the background is now showing more. I am also adding the card text class to the text. Quickly, I'll add these classes to the remaining grid items too. The last section we have is the contact one. Here again, I will add a lighter background color and some padding. The H2 gets the styles we added before. The child elements of the form should be 1 rem apart, so I can use space -y-4 again, and I'll add some padding. Then I want the input fields and text boxes to be full width and block. For this, I will add a rule to the style.css file using @layer_base. Within it, I will select input and text box. Using @apply, I am assigning the class block and w-full to achieve this. Once the build process finishes, you can see that the page automatically reloads and changes. The send button at the end of the form gets the btn-stroke class. This SVG I only want to show on bigger screens. To hide it, I can simply add the class hidden, which is the equivalent of display none. Finally, let's style the footer. This too gets padding like the other elements. Then, the links containing the SVG icons should be inline and have a height and width of 1.5 rem. To be able to specify the fill of the SVG, we first have to assign it a text color. This is because the fill will adapt the color of the text. So if I say text -lime -400 and then fill current, the SVG will turn lime. On hover, I want them to be green, so I can simply state hover, text -green -400. I'll add these rules to the other icons too. That's it for the mobile version. If we make the screen bigger, you can however see that the design is not great. Thankfully, we only need to add a few more classes for larger screen sizes to adjust this, and then we are done. Beginning with the header, at a medium screen size, I want to increase the padding on the sides to 2.5 rem. At a large screen size, it should be 4. If you check the documentation, you can see the styles specified for the screen size of MD get applied at 768 pixels. LG steps into effect from 1024 pixels. Next, let's increase the XY development text to 3XL at medium screen sizes. In the hero section, I want to position the SVG image and the text next to each other when we reach the threshold of medium. I can simply add MD for medium, and then the class grid. Additionally, I am also adding MD grid -cols -2, so it generates 2 columns, empty justify between, and empty items end to align the items to the end of the grid. Then I can also add on some changes in padding so it increases on the sides when the screen becomes larger. Now the girl is next to the text. I want to increase the padding for the services section on bigger screen sizes too, so I am adding the same rules here. The buttons are kind of spilling into here, so I will add some rules to avoid this. I can simply add a padding to its container. I am also adding a space -x -2 as they are too close together. Then the services section should stack the options next to each other. I will simply add grid -cols -3 to the medium screen size. Scrolling down, I will add the same to the portfolio grid, and I will add some padding rules to the containing section. The contact section gets these padding rules too. And then here we want to display the SVG right next to the form. Because I love grid, I will use it here too. I will simply add a grid with 2 columns and a 2 rem gap space between and align stars. The SVG now no longer needs to be hidden, so I can add empty colon inline and W-4 divided by 5. This fraction translates to 80% and basically means make the SVG as big as 80% of its container. I am also giving it a margin of auto along the x-axis, and there we go, the contact area is ready. Finally, the last thing I need to do is add some extra padding to the footer for bigger screen sizes. With this, the project is done. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please subscribe. I regularly put out front-end web development videos. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Feel free to also share what you have built in the comments or by reaching out to me. Thanks for watching and see you next time.